This video is going to go through problem 17.7 of Gapenski's Healthcare Finance, 6th edition. And again, we're asked to do a DuPont analysis. So once again, that's ROE equals equals total margin times total asset turnover times equity multiplier, right? So ROE is net income divided by equity. Total margin is net income divided by total revenue. Sorry, times, not equals. Total asset turnover is total revenue divided by total assets. Equity multiplier is total assets divided by equity. And again, you can see that I could do a series of cancellations, right? Total revenue, total assets. I could cancel, and I'd have net income over equity. But, and that would equal this, right? So this is an identity. But it's useful to be able to look at each of these four ratios because they each tell us something a little different about the organization. So let's fill in the information here. All right, looking for my numbers. Okay. Total income is 14,242. Equity is 27,430. That gives us 51.9%. Total net income of 14,242. Total revenues are 64,664. That gives us a total margin of 22%. So total revenue again, divided by total assets. Total assets are 57,430. And that gives us a total asset turnover of 1.13. And then finally, total assets, so we carried that up here, divided by equity, 27,430, gives us a equity multiplier of 2.09. So this is our heart hospital. And then the industry averages are 37.6%, 15%, 1.5, and 1.67. Okay, so let's compare. So this is industry, right? This is heart hospital. So let's start over here in the equity multiplier. So a higher equity multiplier means they're using more leverage. So heart hospital is more leveraged than the industry average. That's going to cause the ROE to go up, right? The easiest way to increase your ROE is to reduce your equity by doing more debt financing. Their total asset turnover is lower than the industry average, so that's bad, right? You want to see a higher total asset turnover. It means they're not using their assets as efficiently as the industry average. However, they have a higher total margin, which means that they're better than the average in terms of cost control. And so even though they're worse on their total asset turnover, their total margin helps make that up. And then the fact that they goose their return on equity by decreasing the amount of equity they have. So those two things combined helps them have a higher return on equity than the industry average. Okay. So part B asks us to calculate and interpret the ratios for heart hospitals. So let me pause and write those out. Okay, so we have our ratios, our industry averages. and then we'll do hard hospitals. So return on assets is net income divided by total assets. Net income for heart hospital, as we talked a minute ago, is 14,242. Total assets is 57,430. So that gives them a return on assets of 24.8. So that's good. That's above industry average. You want to be higher than the industry average. Their current ratio is their current assets divided by their current liabilities. Their current assets are 22,000. Their current liabilities are 8,000. So 22 divided by 8 gives them a current ratio of 2.7. So that's better than the industry average. So that's good. Means they're more liquid, have more assets ready to pay more current assets ready to pay their current liabilities. Days cash on hand is the number of days worth of expenses that they can cover with their cash and short-term investments or marketable securities. So that's cash plus marketable securities divided by expenses minus depreciation divided by 365. So in this case, that's 14,200 divided by $130 a day, gives them a days cash on hand of 108. So that's better than the industry average of 85. So that would make investors feel good. At the average collection period is net patient receivables divided by patient revenue, daily patient revenue. So daily patient revenue is going to be patient revenue divided by 365. So that's 64,000 divided by 365. So it's 5918 divided by 64,505 divided by 365. That gives them 33.5 days average collection period. That's bad, right? Because you want, if anything, you want to be below the industry average on your collection period, because the longer your collection period is, you're basically just making an interest-free loan to the people that you're providing care to. The debt ratio, right, is an expression of how much debt it is how much of your organization is financed by debt. So the industry average is 40%. Heart Hospital has 30,000 in debt and 57,000 in equity. That gives them a 52.2% debt ratio, which means they are more leveraged than their competitors or their industry. So that's not let's just say they're taking more risk than the industry. So I say that's bad. Their debt to equity ratio is just another way of expressing this. And debt to equity is total debt divided by total equity. So in this case, that's 1.09. The industry average is 0.67. So as you would have expected, this is also higher than the industry, and it just tells you they're taking more risk. Times interest earned is how much earnings do they have with respect to their interest expense. So that's the EBIT, the earnings before interest and taxes. So we start with our net income, add back our interest payment and our taxes if we have any. In this case, they don't. They just have an interest payment. So that's their net income is 14.2. Their interest payments are 1,300. So we add that together. That gives you 15,000 and some change divided by their interest payment of 1,300. So that gives them a times interest earned of 11.7 times. 7 times. So that's good. That shows that they've got plenty of money to cover their interest payments. And then finally, their fixed asset turnover is total revenue divided by net fixed assets. So that's 64,000 divided by 33,000. That gives them a fixed asset turnover of 1.9. That means that they do a better job utilizing their fixed assets than the industry average. So that's good. Their total, a note here, their total asset turnover was slightly worse than the industry average. So they're not doing a good job, so probably they're not doing a good job managing maybe their current assets, or it could be they have a lot of investments. It's just hard to say what it is that's driving up their. Well, I guess we could look. Let's see. Do they have a lot of? They don't really have a lot of other assets, so it must be the result is their current assets. I was going to say maybe if they have a lot of investments, but they don't have a lot of investments to blow up their assets. So they're probably not doing a good job managing their current assets as as the notes here say. Okay, so that is 17.7.